I'm John Kaiser in Toronto at the Metals Investor Forum. It's March 2nd, 2024. I am here with Jason Weber, CEO of Silver North Resources. Jason, welcome to Toronto.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Now, Silver North, who has the previous name was Alianza, was a prospect generator, farm out type juniors. You had projects in Nevada, Latin America. You did have farm outs. The projects were returned to you by the farm-in partners. But you recently pivoted back to the more traditional model of exploring a project 100% in the current situation. It's Haldane. What has changed about the whole industry that prompted you to make this change to a traditional 100% exploration model?
Well, I think one of the biggest factors is the project generator model is an extremely difficult model to execute on. It's hard to bring in partners consistently on projects, and we also had a fairly high threshold of partner that we wanted to bring in on projects, and that's become more and more difficult in recent years. Just the state of the market. It's tougher to get major companies to farm in on projects at an early stage. And that's really our group's expertise is early stage. That's our passion, so that pre-discovery leading into discovery phase. And it's just become more and more difficult to bring in the big producers on those projects. At the same time, we also got this Haldane project. And in the backs of our minds, we'd always told each other, if we find that one project that we really like, we're not afraid to go 100% on it. And so as we started to work on Haldane, we made it a great discovery, and the market really wasn't recognizing it. We felt that the dilution of our story of being a project generator was taking away from that silver story. So that was sort of the genesis of going from Alianza to Silver North.
Now, obviously, Hecla's arrival, taking out Alexco, changed the situation. Alexco came in there with great intentions. It had a reclamation plan. That's how it got the project. It executed on that, and it got the mill going again. But it has struggled to make a profit. Hecla took them out. What is Hecla planning to do differently from Alexco that's going to turn the Keno Hill district into something significant and also make your Haldane project to the west more relevant than it was while Alexco was struggling?
Yeah, and that's a really good question, because I think that's a cornerstone idea to us being in the district is what is going to be different. I think the Alexco team did a fantastic job in exploration at Keno, and on the reclamation side, the whole package. I think there's a couple things that conspired against them. I think one is they had probably hoped for better silver prices when they did resume mining at Keno Hill. And I think the hope was that they could probably get, using profits, invest that back into the mine, get more faces operating and get throughput at their mill up to 100%. And that was one of the key problems they had, is when they made their announcement that they were shutting down for a bit, which really opened the door for Hecla to come in because their share price got hit pretty hard. And Hecla had been looking at the project for quite a while, like probably close to a decade. It opened the door with their decreased share price because they could never invest in infrastructure to get faces worked so they could get throughput up to full capacity at the mill. So they were running a mill under capacity, and then they had the stream with Wheaton that was a real, I think, that was a real burden on them. The silver stream probably was agreed to with the understanding that back in the day, these deposits were thought to become zinc rich at depth. And the Alexco exploration team did a really good job disproving that. So they did a fantastic job. They're finding high-grade mineralization at depth, and they have a better understanding now on that zonation from silver to zinc, and it's not just pure depth related. So that conspired against them in the fact that they signed this stream with Wheaton that they could never get out from under. So when Hecla came along, they were able to extinguish the stream. So that's right off the top, that was, I think they paid somewhere in the neighborhood of $190 million for the project. 135 of that was to extinguish the stream.
So almost twice as much
Yeah.
for the silver stream.
Yeah. And then they bought the mine for 60 or 65 million, something like that. So now Hecla's gone in, they've been investing in it. They've been doing a bunch more exploration. And, the hope is, from our perspective, that Hecla starts to show that this is a profitable operation. And that will reflect well on the other projects like ours in the area. So we'll see that hopefully in the next few quarters. But I know Hecla put out a news release mid-February just outlining some of the exploration results. They've just been fantastic. And then when you add on top of that, since they took over the mine in September of 2022, they've added 45% to their silver reserves there. So it sounds like things are going well there, and we may see that turn around here fairly quickly.
So the kind of ironic story with Alexco was that the geological model was incorrect. The silver, in fact, persists with high grade at depth. Now, Haldane is actually a mountain that's to the west, sticks way out, big landmark and all that. And there are some high grade workings in the southern part of it, but it has nowhere had the activity that the Keno Hill district to the east has ever had. What is the geological difference and similarity between Haldane Mountain and the veins in the Keno Hill district that Hecla now controls?
So when you look at, I don't know what it would be, probably in excess of 90% of the silver deposits in the district are hosted within what's called the Keno Hill basal quartzite. Remember, it's just a thick package of brittle rocks that break nicely to form veins. We have a very thick package of that unit as well at Haldane. So that's the first sort of major similarity, the first check box that you check off. And then our veins are similar in character. They're siderite, galena-sphalerite veins, just like you see at Keno. And we've been very fortunate with both Alexco and Hecla that their exploration personnel have been very forthright and with us and have helped us out a lot with looking at these veins and their characteristics, and they're very similar. So they say to us, you're looking at the same style of mineralization we are. So another box that we can check off. The differences, probably the major difference is the valley that runs down the axis of the district, which you pointed out kind of ends right at Mount Haldane where our project is. That's been glaciated. So the last glacial period scraped off all the weathered mineralization that would have overlain the fresh sulfides, which made it easy for the old timers to find these veins back in the early 1900s. For us, that glaciation hasn't scraped off all that old weathered vein material. So what happens when you have these big blocks of brittle rock and you weather out the softer sulfide in between, the blocks come together and you don't see the vein material anymore. And where you do see it, it's probably degraded in its silver and lead values. So you'll get some indication perhaps on surface, but you really have to drill down below the zone of weathering to get fresh sulfide to give you the true nature character of the vein mineralization. So that's one of the big key differences, and that's what allows us to make new discoveries essentially 100 years later, is that we're testing below that weathered zone that overlies the majority of our mineralization. The sort of the less important piece I could say is the fact that there's probably a fault structure in between Mount Haldane and the rest of the district that's rotated things slightly. So our veins aren't exactly the same orientation, but it does look like if you rotated everything back, it would fit nicely with the rest of the district.
Now, in the past decade, a couple dozen holes have been drilled into Haldane. Half of them, I think, was by Silver North, and you get a nice intersection here and another one there. But the market has not given you any credit for this because they're not seeing deposits that hang together emerge. What needs to happen at Haldane to get people to start saying, whoa, they got it. This just requires money and drilling to turn into like, and then how big a prize do you think is capable from this target?
Well, I think the first step has already happened, and that's Hecla coming in and reviving the district. Essentially, I think when we announced our discovery back in 2021, which was 300 grams silver over 8.7 meters true width, that's essentially ore grade and definitely ore width style mineralization. I'm not saying it is ore at this point, but that would fall into that category if you were at Keno. So when we made that discovery, I think people looked at it and said, yeah, that's fantastic, but your neighbor's not making money. You're gonna have to do a lot better than that. So I think that's the first step, is Hecla coming in, reviving the district, showing that these are profitable systems, and that for us now, it's a matter of putting the path to 15 or 25 million ounces or even greater together on these systems, which means we have to step out, start following the high-grade portion of the vein to depth. We figure it's going off to the southwest. We can follow it along strike and to depth and start putting that drill pattern together to show that size potential. We're very fortunate that we have our west fault discovery. We have the main fault, which is just a few hundred meters away, which looks to have the same potential for high-grade and thick veins. And then we have a new discovery called Bighorn, which we only have one hole into, which, quite frankly, we were a little disappointed in when we drilled the hole, only because it was 125 grams silver over a couple meters. But when we showed it to the exploration teams at Keno, they were adamant that style of mineralization is really significant, and we could be 50 meters away from a high-grade portion of the vein. So they're adamant that we should be following up on that. So that's the kind of help we can get up there from those guys. But that all leads us to feel that, if you had 2 or 3 of these that were 20 or 25 million ounces, that's easily significant for the district. I'm not saying all of them will be, but we've got, cumulatively speaking, about 12 kilometers of vein to explore on our property. And with the 28 holes that have been drilled to date, we've probably only examined maybe 600 meters of that. So there's lots of room for us to grow and find new deposits here.
And my understanding is that the high-grade silver, zinc, lead mineralization occurs as shoots within sort of jogs within the main faults. How much of the strike do these high-grade shoots typically occupy?
They can be very small. So these veins can be, thousands of grams silver in the high-grade portion. So you only need, a few hundred meters of strike and 5 to 10 meters width to put a number of ounces together. So they can be quite small. So there's the footprint, and this is why it's important when you're looking at these things to recognize, okay, if you have the right style of mineralization and the right alteration, you're into a system. Now it's a matter of finding where that high-grade shoot is. And it's known from the other projects in the district that you can have multiple high-grade shoots within a vein structure system. So that also bodes well for the exploration.
Now, Yukon has been perceived as something of an also-ran in terms of mining activities, big deposits that get developed. But that the discovery snowline made in the eastern part of Yukon has turned people's attention to Yukon, these intrusion-related gold system. Your property with the Keno Hill District, it's sort of smack in the middle of an area that's now getting a lot of exploration. Victoria Gold has put Eagle into production. Banyan has been delineating its Ormac project, and Sitka Gold is also drilling right now in the middle of winter in Yukon. Yeah. You're smack in the middle of this. What's the connection between the sort of the silver veins and this intrusion-related gold stuff? And is there anything at depth possible that might be gold-related in your Haldane project?
So yeah, it's a really good question, because for 100 years this was known as the Silver District, and now we've got a gold mine at Eagle, as you've said. Banyan right next door to us they're over 6 million ounces in resource there. There is a genetic relationship, we feel, between the silver and the gold systems. Part of it may be that just proximity to the source intrusions that are driving the heat systems and the plumbing systems they're being driven. It's probably a proximity to those that is interplaying on this. And one of the theories is maybe the causative intrusions might be sitting sort of under Banyan's area where they're working. It's a little too early to tell, but I know that at Banyan, for example, they're exploring in the unit above the basal quartzite, which we find our mineralization, but they have found silver veins in that unit as well. So they're not as well developed. I don't think there's long, strike and continuity, but they exist. So when you see that, as a geologist, even though we don't understand the genetics of it at this point, it appears to be a very dynamic system. And for us, dynamic systems produce better ore bodies. And you have a better chance of finding more ore bodies when you get dynamic systems. So I think that speaks to the quality of the Keno district and its prospectivity in general. For us, we do have exposures of that overlying, what's called the sourdough unit that Banyan's been exploring. We haven't focused on the gold aspect, but we do have soil geochemistry that has more of a intrusion-related gold system signature than it does a Keno style, silver vein signature. So for us, that's something we would like to look at some point, but right now the focus is definitely on the silver.
One last question. 5 years ago, when you were still a prospect generator, farm out junior, you did a deal on the Tim project, which is on the southern part of Yukon, close to the BC border, with Coeur Mining. They didn't get much done, but you recently extended the agreement. What is the Tim project about? Why did nothing get done, and why did you extend the agreement?
So nothing gets done. That's kind of an unfair statement because Coeur did some really good groundwork and kind of took a step back and did a soil geochem over the whole property, map, prospected, and really with the idea of trying to put it in the context of what they were exploring at Silvertip. And they did that. They did a SkyTem geophysical survey that covered the property. So they spent, wasn't quite $500,000 doing that initial work. Then we got into the permit application process, which took a little longer than we had anticipated, and that delayed subsequent work programs. So that's why we ended up renegotiating or basically setting the agreement with Coeur. They've been fantastic to deal with. They have been doing very good work at Silvertip, outlining new resources there. And I think they're eager to take that knowledge that they've gained there and start applying it to other targets in the district. We're about 19 kilometers from the Midway mine complex, and same rocks, same geological setting. So we're really happy to have their expertise come over and apply that to Tim and hopefully make a discovery in which, the first phase of that is a $700,000 drill program this year.
Now, the permit that you finally managed to get after all these delays, if they pull a discovery hole, do they have to go back to the permitting bodies, or do they have, is the permit large enough that they can just go to town and start delineating?
There's another 4.5 years left on that permit, so they'll be able to go to work. It's pretty standard. You have to reclaim as you go, and as long as they do that, that permit will stay active. At some point, if the project were to develop, they'd probably re-enter the permitting process, continue under the current permit, but get the next one in anticipation of bigger work. But, that's a couple of years down the road.
Now they can go to 80% by delivering, I think, a pre-feasibility study by 2028, which is really only 4 or 5 years from now, which, this, given the seasonal nature of this part of the world, that might be tough to accomplish. Coeur and Hecla are the rivals for the silver bug's attention. So if they have a discovery there, might they not want to take you out sooner than later, and especially create a problem for Hecla with suddenly Haldane is in their portfolio rather than Hecla, you guys waiting for Hecla to get around to say, geez, we need that ore that these guys are starting to delineate.
Yeah, of course, I don't know what's going through either company's heads right now, but certainly, yeah, I mean, once they get to 80%, which is actually by delivering a positive decision to mine, that 20% becomes kind of a headache for them. So we would anticipate that at that point, we'd probably just be taken out. And then it becomes a negotiation on what happens with Haldane. And so it's how bad they want it at that point. So obviously we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but we certainly hope it gets to that point. I mean, that would be the ideal situation, is that we would have a discovery made at Tim. And I think when you look at all the targets in that area, which there are a few, Tim is the next highest ranked target. When they originally made the Silvertip discovery back in the 80s, Tim was the next highest ranked target in the district. So it kind of makes sense this is the next one that they're moving on. As far as the workability of the project, because it's road access, we actually, and our permit allows us to work almost year round. So if they were set up to do winter drilling, we could accomplish that.
So with 2 drill programs this summer, this could be the year that Silver North really, its fortunes really change for the upside.
Yeah, and that's kind of the whole idea. We made the change to Silver North, was to try to take advantage of that scenario. It's with a little luck from Mother Nature, there's a nice big deposit on each of the properties, but obviously that exploration has to be done to find that out.
Well, I wish you a lot of luck with drilling programs on both projects. I've been talking with Jason Weber, CEO of Silver North Resources. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you very much.